Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to LincolnIT's Take Flight with LincolnIT, the Fortinet flight, or Flight Fortinet. I apologize. My name is Anne-Marie Santamarina, and it is my pleasure to be your, I don't know what you call them, the person, the main steward, the main flight attendant. But I'm here with our pilot, Michael Weir from Ingram Micro Fortinet. And I'm super excited to take you guys on this journey today. So this is the last of our series. So if you've been with us before, welcome back. And if this is your first time flying with us, welcome aboard. I am going to actually hand over to Mike and let him start off. And we're going to get started right away.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming and joining me on this Flight Fortinet. As Anne-Marie said, I am your pilot, Michael Weir, NSC7 certified Fortinet technical account manager from Ingram Micro. There's going to be a couple of layovers in this flight today because you bought the cheap tickets. We're not flying direct. We're going to depart from gate vulnerable. We're going to have a couple of layovers, one in general security, one in ransomware, and one in compliance and data security. And then when we get to our destination, we'll be arriving at the gate known as secure. So please listen to the security briefing here at gate vulnerable. All right, you'll notice surrounding you there are arrows going all directions, pointing at your network. And we would like you to direct your attention to these four major ones here, right over the left wing. They are the pieces of the edge that we normally think about, this being your switching and your WAN edge and your Wi-Fi edge at campus and branch. In the old days, that's all we thought about securing, but now that things are getting a little bit more complicated, most people have expanded their thinking to say that we can now look at things that people are traveling or people that work from home and say we still have to secure this thing. But you'll notice that completely ignores the other side of the spectrum, all the other edges that you might have, whether it be a cellular edge, an OT edge, your cloud edges. If you have any kind of data center or headquarters situation where you're putting information back and forth, that is something to look at. So with that, welcome aboard to the wow. It's a good thing I'm not actually a steward because I can't speak. Pre-flight safety briefing. The original safety that was in this aircraft was endpoint security, and endpoint security is used by over 90% of everybody in this plane, so I feel like we'll be in pretty good shape right there. Networking security has only got a penetration rate of about 60%, so we have some work to do here, but please keep your network security on and fastened all the time. And then for those who were far ahead of everything else today, we have cloud security. We will not be hitting any turbulence if we have those three technologies in place. And those three technologies there, the one I wanted to find a little more closely is the bottom of EDR and ZTNA. We're going to touch on those concepts a number of different times, but they stand for endpoint detection and response, zero trust network access. The first one is a product, the second one is more of a way of thinking, and we're going to get to those. Now, the problem is if you don't listen to the safety briefing, when this plane takes off, if something terrible happens, you might not know what to do. It might be something along these lines. So this is a graph of data breaches per year for the last 4 years. And I'll emphasize 2020, at the point this graph was made, was an estimate. And you'll notice, even if we went all the way back to like 2015 or so, the number of data breaches per year reported hovers about the same. Now, the reason I emphasize reported a couple times here is that not everyone in every industry is required to report that they've been breached. These are just people generally who are required to report or are in such a standing with the public that it is better for them to report than have it leak. So the actual numbers we have no idea about. But this is just to show you an example of a trend. You can see that in 2020, data breaches went way up. And some people might say to themselves, oh, that's because everybody's working from home. That's why it went way up. But it doesn't matter how the breach happened. Like that's like saying my leg's not broken because I broke it playing soccer, not skiing. It doesn't matter. You're still ending up with a broken leg. Either way. And with this understanding, we're going to take off and land at our first layover, which is general security. The general security airport. There's three little terminals connected to this thing. First one being your users and devices, the second one being your network, and the third one being your compute. These are, obviously there's bleed between these two. There's a lot of walkways between these separate terminals here, but this is generally how we can break things up. That there's three categories of devices we can have on any network. The unknown, the known, and the trusted. Known and trusted are different in this case. And of course, there's different components of the network there, your switching, your WAN, Wi-Fi, if you got 5G coming over, something along those lines, and your different types of clouds. This is generally what we're talking about when it comes to security. When we're talking about the Fortinet view of that security, it's a little more complicated because Fortinet has, if this is just the major products, if you were to count sub-product lines underneath of these, then you would get to about 46 different products that Fortinet has, which is impressive. But we are the most end-to-end security vendor out there in that you could literally do an entire networking and security deployment with just Fortinet, FortiGate, FortiSwitch, FortiAP, FortiClient on your endpoints, FortiMail, FortiWeb, FortiCASB, and then do all your NOC, SOC, SIM, SOAR analytics. You can do it all. Even security cameras and telephones. Do people say telephone anymore? That felt so archaic when it came out of my mouth. Phones, the Fortiphone. And one more thing we have to say at Gate General Security, though it's not necessarily directly related to general security, is just the fact that we are well respected. Fortinet likes to have this be their brag slide. You're actually not allowed to edit the stuff that's in that white area. This has to be put out just as it is. I just add little boxes. We have, for 11 years in a row, been in the Magic Quadrant for network firewalls in the leader category. This was our first time in a WAN edge infrastructure, aka SD-WAN, that we are in the leader quadrant. And then we are in the visionary quadrant for wired and wireless LAN access. So you'll notice we have moved beyond a lot of the people that one would normally think about for this area, such as Dell being down there, or Arista or something along those lines. And I occasionally do have to make a joke about this. You'll see right at the bottom there, there's the ankle biter ubiquity. We call it the ankle biter because it's like a little puppy always running around your ankles trying to nip you. Any questions about our first layover here of general security?
I think you're doing
Awesome.
a great job, Mike. I think we're ready for our connecting flight here.
Okay, absolutely. So with that in mind, we're going to take another quick hop. We're doing our second layover at ransomwaring data. So how does ransomware data land in your system? Get it? Land, it's a plane. And it can come from almost anything. If your system was an airport and it had a whole bunch of terminals, the ransomware airplane could land at pretty much all of them. It could come in the form of an email attachment. It could come in the form of a drive-by download. So think of email attachment as the cargo on a plane. A drive-by download would be you trying to get on a plane, and while you're walking on the runway or the gateway or whatever it is where you're walking from your gate to the plane, somebody steals some of your stuff. Peer-to-peer downloads, we all know those are bad. Infected or removable media. Think about this as if we put someone who had a cold on the plane with you, or hopefully never COVID, but put someone who was sick on the plane with you, and everybody got it. That's your infected removable media, like a flash drive. Bad web hygiene. The best way to think of this is person who goes around in like one of the little restaurants or places where you pick up your food and they just touch everything as they go and kind of get their little sickness over and maybe pick up that sandwich that's expired 2 days ago, something like that. Just doing things you're not supposed to do on the web. And of course, backups. Say having a second plane in line in case the first plane blows up. And you might say, well, how come there's a backup? How does ransomware land in a backup? Backups are cold. Generally speaking, this is true, but there's ransomware that delays its action. So you could have had it cold for 30 days not moving in storage, and you could get ransomware, and the ransomware is something that's set up to activate once every 30 days, because that's how long the interval usually is for system backups. So you could get re-downloaded, re-ransomware 30 days later out of what you thought was a clean backup. That's why that one's on there. And ransomware attacks per year. This to me is very interesting and informative graph, because when you're looking at 2016, 2015, 2016 was like peak ransomware. It's right when it was WannaCry and NotPetya and all those sorts of things for the years generally 14, 15, 16 in that area was like the peak. Eternal Blue, Eternal Rocks, everything. 2017, and once again these are reported. I should have said that just like the previous slide. Not everybody has to report. This is the people who have to report. 2017, 18, 19 stayed relatively even, and now here in 2020 we go back up. And once again, people might say, oh, it's because we're working from home. Well, yes, like I said, that doesn't make it not a broken leg. But the other driver for this is and this is just a little bit more on the personal opinion side because there's not a hard data on it yet, but I'm willing to bet If we take a look at it, it will be from the infected device thing, from somebody bringing an infected device back in your network, like somebody who has a cold walking onto a plane. For that spike, almost double it, over doubling what it was in 2019 or 2017, it's just about doubling what it was in 2018. So how does ransomware work? Well, we start off, those orange devices are devices that just got brought in. This person was working from home, they just brought it back into your network. And what does ransomware do? First thing it does is say, hey, all right, I'm going to find a path out to the rest of the network, and I am going to propagate myself to all of these devices. So what this happens when it does this and goes, woo, that is called lateral movement. And lateral movement is a piece of ransomware propagating, or really anything else, propagating across an entire environment from a single source. Typically speaking, I had it go to the switch. That's not totally accurate. Technically speaking, it probably would have gone to the server, and then as people access the server, it would have propagated itself out using the server as a pivot point, but we're oversimplifying for now, and that's totally okay. And now we've discovered these things about ransomware, that ransomware can actually take other things that are IoT and OT, etc., and ransom them as well, such as another vendor whose name I won't name did a proof of concept where they used a DSLR camera to introduce ransomware into someone's network because it was a Wi-Fi capable DSLR camera. So even your point of sale stuff, everything needs to be broken off. And this is where we get into that idea of zero trust networking. So zero trust networking is that there is nothing that's default trusted, even a cashier station or something like that, because anything that is default trusted becomes either a pivot point or a place that malware can emanate from. Now, because we have a firewall in place, we have to assume that this won't happen to you. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't have our firewall in place yet. This is WAN coming ransomware. And WAN coming ransomware would be stopped by this. So if we're talking Fortinet world, the stopping of, why did that jump? Oh, well, the stopping of ransomware will go like that. So we have, on the top one is our symbol for FortiGate, FortiGate being our next generation firewall appliance. And then the one below it is FortiSandbox. So what would happen is we have this WAN antivirus, or this WAN virus incoming, and goes through the FortiGate down into the FortiSandbox. And what the FortiSandbox does is take it and run it in a simulated environment, whether it be a Windows PC, a Mac, or an Android or an OT environment or something like that. And this can be delivered on-prem or in the cloud or as a VM, however you want it. FortiGate says, this is suspicious, I'm sending it to you. And so it sits there and it detonates it. It goes and puts it in this virtual environment and manipulates it until it does whatever action it's, could potentially do, determines if it's malicious or not, and then tells, we can say, it can say, just discard it, quarantine the client that had this. It can send out a micro definition to all of your other things in your security fabric, just to make sure that your environment is hardened from having that ever happen again. So that is the network-wide view of it. So we got two things I talked about there besides the ransomware. That's FortiGate for guarding the WAN edge, and FortiSandbox for taking care of these unknown threats that are coming in through the WAN edge. But let's say the worst possible thing happens. Let's say we do get a piece of ransomware on that computer that returned to the network, on that laptop there. On an individual device level, this is how ransomware works. Comes from somebody's bad actions, and it goes and sits on the kernel. Kernel is the most base part of the OS. It's what makes everything else work, so to speak. And then from the kernel, it goes up and puts itself into the OS and starts performing actions in the OS. And then last, it starts encrypting applications and data. Generally speaking, this is when people start noticing. It's worth noticing too, these generally work really fast. It's not like there's 10 minutes in between. This is just the flow that the ransomware takes. And the problem is, once you have been ransomwared, you change to a frown. So we go from the kernel to the OS to the apps and data, and then to sad you. So let's take a look at ways to stop it. So traditional EDR sits in the middle and says, all right, you may be able to get to the kernel and you may tell the computer to perform some actions, but I'm going to take it, I'm going to say stop before those actions actually move into the rest of the device that we're talking about. So it'll kill each action as it comes out of the kernel. Now that can get relatively high demand, but it does, high demand in terms of resources, but it does stop what's going on. It's every time it creates a process in the kernel, it's saying breaks, stop, 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 stop. That's traditional EDR. I want to talk about FortiEDR, but you could really say this is true for any second generation EDR. Is they watch either as a kernel hook or, in our case, directly inside the kernel to say that ransomware, when you try to start this process inside the kernel, we're going to kill it before it even runs. So it's taking snapshots of what's going to happen in an operating system before it actually happens. So every new process that's started, every new internet sessions that's created, things like that, it takes a snapshot, sends that snapshot to an analytics engine. The analytics engine gives it a verdict to either kill the process or kill the connection or just allow it to take place. This means that the ransomware never technically starts working. It stops as soon as it tries. Like, think of it like this. Think about if somebody was on your plane and they started to sneeze, and before they could sneeze, you just put like a bag over their head or something, or a sneeze guard. That's kind of grim. Should have thought of a better metaphor. Either way, you don't allow that sneeze to get out. That sneeze stays anywhere and doesn't get to anybody else. That's kind of what this is like. Actually, you know, 40 would probably, EDR probably even stopping the sneeze process on the plane. So make sure that person doesn't sneeze and doesn't get you sick. But either way, this is the basis of EDR in general. And FortiEDR, of course, being our product, the second generation when it sits in the kernel. Do we have any questions about ransomware?
I did put an offer to have people put questions in the chat as well if they weren't able to come off mute. But at the moment, Mike, I think you're providing all the information that's needed. I don't see any questions.
Awesome. In that case, we'll take flight again and we will land in our third layover, which is data compliance, or I should say compliance and data security. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look at compliance and a couple of different ways to look at data security. Before we get that, I just want to get the background of what's going on here. This is records leaked per year. And once again, this is only based on recorded, publicly announced breaches. It's not like anybody can, you know, when records leak, only under certain conditions do you actually have to give notification. And the conditions are expanding, so there's more and more times you have to give notification. But this was this is the ones that are recorded, and 2020 is an estimated number at this point, because as we've seen so many times play out in the, on the news and the papers, that sort of thing, groups will get data and then they'll be like, hey, so we won't release it, then they'll release it in little chunks. Really, the accurate numbers and it's probably lag behind by about a year. But this is why we have to worry about compliance and data security. When we're talking about compliance and data security, though, we're not looking at data security, we're not looking at compliance as a punishment, because some people say, oh man, I'm not compliant, that's just a punishment. That means that I'm not going to get to do, whatever, I'm going to have to pay a fine, I'm going to have to do this or that. We're not just looking at it like that. We're looking at that compliance and data security are things that go hand in hand. Like, you follow the law because you want to be a better customer, not just, or a better network security provider or what have you. You don't just follow because compliance says you have to. Too many people look at it like that. Then comes the question, of course, how do I secure data so I stay in compliance and so my data is secure and I don't become a statistic that's on that leaked record model? There is an absolute ton of ways to secure data. Realistically speaking, all these things up here are things that everyone should have. So I'm a CMMC registered practitioner. That's my experience into compliance and data security there, besides my general Fortinet training and security training and all that sort of thing. And I can say I base them very, very loosely on the requirements of that standard. And some of these are products, and some of these are behaviors, like information handling hygiene. That is a procedure. That's a behavior. That's not the kind of thing like you can only do so much within that until the human element starts to break it. This goes back to zero trust network access, the idea that it's technically not zero trust. It's giving everything the least amount of trust possible for it to still be able to function in the way it needs to function. And information handling hygiene is part of that, but that's a process and a procedure. Information security. So this is a mix. This is something you can do with various products. It is something you can do with behaviors and all that sort of thing. Physical security, I think that's a relatively obvious one. Card cams, windows, things along those lines, door locks. But what a lot of people don't consider is the fact that there's more to physical security than that. Think about if you're walking through, let's say you're walking through, we're in an airport, walking through an airport, and you walk by one of those little terminal, where the person stands announcing how late the flight's going to be and all that kind of thing with the screens behind them. I don't know if that has a real name or not, but let's just say you walk through there and you see their computers just sitting there, and you stick in a USB drive just as you're walking by, nice and casually. And that USB drive contains a keylogger, which starts logging everything they type. And then next time they walk away, you walk back and take that keylogger and go back to where you were. That's the kind of thing that physical security needs to prevent, not just searching you as you go into the airport, but continuously monitoring you wherever you are inside the airport. Next, of course, being identity verification. So if you're going to be a pilot, you have to have a name tag on. If you're going to be a stewardess, you have to have some sort of, or a steward, you have to have some kind of identification or name tag on. If you are someone who is getting onto the plane, you need to have you need to have a ticket, and previous to that, you need to have shown ID. We need to make sure your identity is verified wherever you go. And unfortunately, with these big flat networks that people make, you're not doing that really. You're authenticating once, say, all right, well, you got through airport security, now do whatever you want. Get on whatever plane you want to get on. They're all open to you. That's the default way a lot of people do things. You put in your two-factor on the network. The idea is the have checks inside of what's going on too. So you have the people at the gate, you have the security driving those little beeping wheelie golf cart looking things back and forth. You have more going on than just what's going on at the gate. And then behavior analytics. So this is looking at how the users and the entities on your network are behaving, if there's any radical changes or things going on that aren't necessarily malicious but are suspicious and need to be looked at. So let's just say I'm my normal sort of uncoordinated, spaced out self walking through an airport, and I turn to go in the bathroom door, and instead I walk into a restricted area as the door was closing from somebody else going in or something like that. And I could say, oops, I'm in the wrong place, and walk back out. So with a good behavior analytics session would be like, oh, he's just dumb. But bad behavior analytics, or what I would call black and white behavior analytics, would arrest me because I went into a restricted area. So that's and the example I use for that is let's say Anne Marie is in HR and suddenly she starts downloading a bunch of accounting data onto her computer. That is something where you could that'd be a suspicious behavior that potentially she was doing something wrong, because her downloading data is completely normal. The different part is the behavior, not the action. And of course, processes and procedures, like I said. And there's always more ways to make data secure. What we're going to talk about in this section are going to be these three. It's going to be information security, identity verification, and behavior analysis. Or in other words, we're going to look at locking things up, making sure you are who you are, and making sure you behave while you're in the airport and on the airplane. There's three major pieces of tech we do that with. And you're going to look at it and say, wait a second, the middle two are basically the same. Yes, I know, it's because you can only phrase things a certain number of ways. So information security, the tech I'm going to talk about for that is data loss prevention. Data loss prevention is making sure that people don't leave the airport, so to speak, or making sure people don't leave the airport with things they're not supposed to leave the airport with. Like I like those chairs they have there. Say I want to make that a sofa, so I pick it up and start walking out the door with it. Data loss prevention says, hey, you can't take that out the door. Would say the same thing if I stole somebody else's passport, right? Identity verification is just you are who you are. You're doing what you said you're doing. Behavior analysis says you're not doing anything you shouldn't be doing while you're doing it. And like the note I said on compliance, that compliance is meant to enforce good practices. It usually lags behind best practice. So just because you're compliant doesn't mean you're secure. And penalties for non-compliance are greatly increasing. So there's a whole bunch of new laws I'm sure you've seen in the past couple of years. There's a GDPR, there's New York's version of that law, there's California's version of that law, there's HIPAA getting more stringent, there's COPPA and CIPA for those of you who are doing education. PCI DSS standards have been upgraded, CMMC for defense contractors. There's all these different things. A lot of people are going to have to, adhere to more than one. But just keep in mind that those things, people say that's like, okay, I'm compliant, I'm good. That's the minimum. That's just meeting it. Best practices is to go beyond that. And now I gave them their cool Fortinet icons on wanted to access data leaks and insider threats. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is going to be data leaks. Now, data loss prevention is how we're stopping these data leaks. And this is what we generally think of stopping them on. is the WAN, email, web applications, and your software as a service applications. These are just places where data more frequently flows out of your network, would be through these 4 ways. Obviously, people can, pull an Edward Snowden, put it on a hard drive and carry it out. That's a different story. But either way, this is Fortinet's suite for this. So we already talked about the FortiGate. I'm not going to beat that up again. The FortiMail, according to Gartner, email security is a stable enough market they don't need to have a quadrant, which always baffled me because email is also the most frequent threat vector, or way that malware or data loss events or ransomware or any of these other things, the most frequent way they come in is via email. So, mature technology, I sort of understand Gartner's thinking, but obviously what's there isn't working. FortiMail is our step towards it. And FortiMail can be a standalone server, or it can be just a gateway, or otherwise sitting in line to the server. We also have partnership with Microsoft Office to have or Microsoft in general, to have an O365/M365 API connection, so that it's not just a proxy between you and your cloud. It's actually an API connection where they're aware of each other. They're doing threat scanning, data loss prevention. You can even do things like clawbacks on emails if you want to, because they're aware of each other. And that's something we can offer that not a lot of other people can, because everything Fortinet is an open ecosystem. We don't use any proprietary protocols or anything that's only compatible with Fortinet. We're compatible with anything industry standard. Next would be the web application firewall, the FortiWeb. Web application firewalls are often overlooked because people say, oh, I've got a general firewall. I don't need a web application firewall. Well, the thing about a general firewall is that somebody accessing a web server is a normal behavior. It's not malicious. It just has to happen, because if you have a web server, you want people to access it. So what FortiWeb does, and some other web application firewalls do, is they take and they will take it's a behavior analysis. It's technically there's a lot more to how it actually gets formed and all that, but it says, all right, this is the normal type of entry, and we're going to do 25% of that on either side to be within the realms of just mistake, and then 25% outside of that is the realms of malicious. But then if you keep hitting it wrong, your malicious score is going to go up until you're blocked. So it's not just black and white. It's, all right, this person is trying to put in this is a rainbow attack. This guy's username is trying to put in 1,000 different passwords, so we're going to block and put the brakes on him and for my administrator. That sort of thing. And then the FortiCASB is what gives us data loss prevention in the cloud. So CASB stands for Cloud Access Security Broker. This is a horribly underappreciated product. I think it's one of these things, I think once people learn it exists and what it does, I think it'll become very popular. It's just not on a lot of people's radar. CASB, what it's doing is first the obvious thing, is brokering access. So the CASB connects to your SaaS application. We'll just use G Suite for example for now. The FortiCASB connects to G Suite, and you connect to the FortiCASB, and nothing comes or goes from your G Suite without going through the FortiCASB. So the G Suite, what Google promises you is that your data will get up there the same, or will come down the same as it went up, and it won't be accessed by anybody who doesn't have authorization. And there's 2 big holes there. Number one, your data could have been bad when it went up, could have had that 30-day ransomware in it. And number 2, people can steal authentication credentials and log in. So FortiCASB takes care of those sorts of things. So it scans for threats at rest and in motion, and it makes sure everybody who's going to be there is there, basically extending your zero trust access to the cloud. So that is way number 1, the data leak prevention. If you want to talk about way number 2, let's talk about this unwanted access, which is knocked out by identity verification. And that's, we're talking about 2 things: identity and access management, IDAM, and user and device control. So IDAM is made up of 2 pieces for Fortinet, and really, you could broaden this out to a lot of different pieces because it's being used in a ton of different ways. But FortiToken and FortiAuthenticator. FortiToken being your SMS messages, your one-time passwords, time-based, their fobs, applications, hard pass USB drives, all that sort of thing is choices on there. And then FortiAuthenticator is the thing with which those talk to the network. Now, it is true, you can run your FortiTokens directly from the FortiGate itself. It is also true that they are auth compliant, But if if those aren't being fulfilled, so let's say you have more than one FortiGate, and you want to authenticate to multiple FortiGates at a time, or let's say you have a Radius and an LDAP server and you want to simultaneously pull both, that's where FortiAuthenticator comes in. Also, if you want to do any kind of SAML actions, which is what a lot of the clouds use, SAML, FortiAuthenticator can translate that to OAuth and send it to the Forti token into your authentication servers and put you in that sort of way. And that's sort of the bare minimum of identity access management. If you want to take it up another notch, you could say, all right, well, I'm going to have people not just verify to get into their email or to get on the web. I'm going to have them verify before they even connect to the network. So I take my FortiGate, because it's Forti, so it's integrated with other things that are Forti. I'm going to say, when you get on to this VLAN, you need to provide authentication, or when you plug into this port, or when you connect to this wireless network. And I'm not going to make it quite so. Hello? I'm going to take it that wasn't directed to me. But yeah, authenticate anywhere you go in a network, not just once. Zero trust means continuously assessing who is doing what where. And the continuous assessing of who is doing what where comes from Fortinet. Fortinet stands for Network Access Controller. So a lot of NACs are just onboarding. Like for those who are, you ever go to a hotel, just have to put in your room number and a password, and throws you onto a network or a VLAN or an SSID or something like that. That's onboarding. Fortinet is more than that, because it can watch the behaviors or characteristics of devices and classify them in a more dynamic way. Basically, it keeps tabs on your network at all times and moves you if necessary. So let's say you've got FortiClient EMS there, and FortiClient EMS changes the tag on a device to being non-compliant, and Fortinet can take that non-compliant tag and either give or receive instructions to the other Forti stuff, the Forti switch or the FortiGate or whatever, and perform those actions that have been requested. The other cool thing about Fortinet is it works on things that are non-IP protocols. So for example, those that are doing SCADA, not IP encapsulated SCADA. You need something that can pay attention to that. Fortinet can, and FortiGate with the enterprise package can. They can watch that non-IP data, because that non-IP data can still be dangerous, can still be stolen. And our last one, we got to talk about insider threats. So when people hear insider threat, they think about, oh, somebody's trying to sabotage me or something like that. I mean, there is such a thing as an unintentional insider threat. So this would be the person who clicks on a phishing email. The reason we call it an insider threat is it started from the inside. It was somebody inside doing an action. So don't just think you have a bunch of bandits, or if I trust everybody on my site, I don't have to do any of this stuff. Insider threats are simply threats that happen or originate from the inside. And the way we're going to stop those things is behavior analysis, behavior analytics. And we're going to do it through two different ways. We're going to do it through UABA and what they call insider threat analysis. Now, UEBA product for this is called Forti Insight. This is coming from Fortinet. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It watches all the behaviors of users and entities and that sort of thing to do more of what I spoke about before, where it notices Anne Marie is suddenly downloading a ton of accounting files, and it'll flag that. Or, this person logged in here, and then 10 minutes later they logged in, 500 miles away. Obviously, that's going to be some kind of threat there, leak credentials, so we'll flag it. And Fortinet has a partnership with this other company called DefendEdge. In fact, a lot of the people working at DefendEdge are highly NSE certified from Fortinet. And DefendEdge sort of takes that UEBA up to the next level to actually do threat analysis. It's sort of somewhere between a UEBA and an EDR product to watch for insider threats that are, malicious and suspicious, and defend against all of them all the time. Far be it for me to recommend something that isn't Fortinet, but in this case, I think that's a very worthy addition to the Forti fabric. And that's another thing about the Forti fabric. I should have said this before. But when you're looking across the Forti fabric and all these different products that we have, they all share security information. So like, if we're looking at our issue here where the where that malware does that. So Forti Sandbox says, hey, this is malicious. This is something that shouldn't be in the network. And then when Forti Sandbox makes that determination, it doesn't just tell the FortiGate. It tells everything Forti that can receive an antivirus definition. So it tells the Forti client, it tells the Forti mail, it tells the Forti web, it tells the Forti everything that, hey, we are stopping this threat. And since DefendEdge is somebody integrates into the Fortinet security fabric, it can share security and insider information in that same way with everything else Fortinet that's going to be in the environment. Are there any questions on our flight before we arrive at the gate called secure?
Well, I just want to say that I feel fortiful. This has really been, continuing to be very helpful. I hope everybody else here feels the same.
And I do have a gift to give you on the way out here. Well, okay, I have a couple of questions and a gift, but first, I want to show you what that all looks like in action. And this, of course, being the full solution. We've got your corporate, your BYOD devices, and we're going to assume you already have a FortiGate on your WAN. So this is going to be, if we're talking about the solutions for just the local on-prem stuff. You've got a FortiGate, FortiSandbox, which could be on-prem or the cloud, and a FortiNAC, either one in the FortiSwitch or a standalone one, controlling what is on your site. And this is going to be the literal controls. Now, let me throw in the controls that are going to different kinds of clouds and different kind of edges, and I'm putting these in dotted lines simply because they're logical connections, they're not physical connections. But before you go to your mail, your web apps, or your SaaS applications, you've got to get some kind of security there too. So this is 2/3 of a full solution. Our third gate, the user side, the data loss prevention and compliance side, that's where you get your FortiEDR, your FortiInsight, and your, oh, I put FortiEDR in the wrong category. Anyway, this is the full deployment, what it looks like. If we want to talk about the pieces that have to do with ransomware, this is what we're talking about: FortiEDR, FortiSandbox, FortiGate, and FortiMail. If we're talking about the pieces that are going to be for compliance and data security, we're talking about a huge suite of products. And that basically covers everything else that we have on the screen. And you might say, man, that's a lot of, that's a lot of products or something up, like that up there. Well, you can consume a lot of these products a lot of different ways. I'm sure if you say, I really need this, but it's too expensive, or I really need this, but I can't, work out this, that, and the other thing. We have people to help you. You don't have to go it alone. We want to make sure that your enterprise is secure and you don't become a statistic. And then just food for thought. Which layer did we leave you behind? Are you safe from general threats? Are you safe from ransomware? Are you safe and compliant in your compliance audits? I just want to leave you with that thought. And if you answer no to any of these, that's what we're here for, right? I have the second highest possible Fortinet certification. I have $100,000 worth of gear sitting next to me right now, and I've trained on all of it. I do, hundreds of hours of professional development a year. If you have a problem, I know both me and the LincolnIT team, we're all highly trained, highly certified people who can help you through it. But this is the point now at which we ask two questions, because there is prizes involved. Anne-Marie, can you tell us about those prizes?
I can, I think. Gail, maybe you could help me out here. So I think we have a Fortinet cooler giveaway.
Yeah, we have a cooler, or you can choose from a cheese bird or whiskey set. So those are the three options.
Ooh, so they all sound fortifying to me. I can't.
Thank you for that.
Once I get started, I just can't stop.
Yeah, no, I actually went to a little family reunion over the weekend, and I took the Forti cooler because, of course, I have one. It was really good. I mean, it was like 6 hours. It kept my ice frozen. I was very impressed.
There you go. He's selling it already.
Yeah, right. Because that's what we came here for, is to sell coolers. Absolutely. Okay.
So who's excited? But everybody loves to win a prize.
Absolutely.
I think that's so. Everybody's still with us? How's our audience doing?
And feel free.
Okay, well, I might be taking the cool home. All right, Matt, I can always count on
All right,
that.
here's the question. Question number one, and hopefully these will be very easy. Question number one, can someone name one way to protect themselves from ransomware? I'll take a product and what it does.
Okay, I might stop recording here.
As the uncomfortable silence grows.
We got 40 EDR in the chat.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a major method for stopping ransomware. And you know what, since that's the first person to answer, we'll give you the prize. I would have also, like I said, how does it work? We'll just say it stops threats at the kernel. FortiEDR stopping threats at the kernel. Bam, no more ransomware. 1 point.
All right. Well, Matt, congratulations. I can work with you offline to get the ship to info, which I think I already have.
And we have one more question for one more person out there. What's a piece of technology that can stop data loss that we talked about? Piece of technology that stops data loss.
I was going to start doing the Jeopardy music, but then I realized that might be a copyright infringement, so I'm not going to do that.
You know what? A parody is rightful use of the original, according to the Supreme Court.
You should have some background music. There's a time limit here.
Yeah. So any takers on this one? Mike, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, what's a product we can use for data loss prevention?
FortiMail?
Exactly, I'll take it.
All right, John, we have another winner. Awesome.
And there's your data security picture. I didn't want to show that before, didn't want to make it too easy and show that right before. So there is that. And of course, our ransomware picture. Now, I'll put this out there. Like I said, anytime you need anything architected or designed, Lincoln's got people to cover you. And of course, I'm always going to be there for them too. So if you look at this and say, gosh, you know, I really want that stuff, but I don't know how to build it, or I need to put this out in 3 phases, what's most vital, or something along those lines, feel free to come to us. We're here from you. We're here for you. We want to hear from you. And yeah, otherwise, I hope you had a pleasant flight. Whoops.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation, and I really appreciate you going along with my theme, because I know that can add extra. So I really appreciate you playing along there.
I tried.
So I just want to wrap us up here. I want to thank everybody for coming. I put my email in the chat. So John and Matt, if you could just send me your ship to details, I will work with you to coordinate your prizes with you each individually. I just want a couple of quick kind of wrap up housekeeping things. If you haven't been to our website recently, www.LincolnIT, I'd like to invite you to check it out. We do have Fortinet at the vendor podium. So just a little bit more information about Fortinet as a company and our partnership with them. I think that everybody here knows LincolnIT, but in case you don't, please visit the website. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to be able to answer those or connect you with the right people who can. So on behalf of Fortinet and LincolnIT, I hope we have provided you with a pleasant and engaging flight today. And I hope you'll come back and see us again. As a little bit of a teaser, we are working on some in-person events. I personally am really excited to get out from behind the computer. Not that these webinars are not great and informative, but it'll be really exciting to see some people in person soon. So please stay tuned for that. Visit us often. And thank you for being here today. And Mike, thank you again. Gail, thank you both. We really appreciate your support and the partnership.
Thank you.
Absolutely.